So far in this project, we've created a storyboard and put a label on it. And we've set some of the label's attributes. We've also created ourselves an outlet for that label. And we've named that variable for the label, label. So now we just want to work a little bit with code with this label. Typically, you'll actually be setting the text property most of the time for the label. So let's start with that. And it's as easy as you might expect. Just label.text. And we can type in our text, add in a space there. Despite the fact that in the attributes we're asking a question in the label, does this label word wrap? In ViewDidLoad, we're setting the text to it does word wrap. And ViewDidLoad, as you remember, runs immediately when this scene is shown. So this is going to overwrite the attribute that we set in the storyboard. So let's see that. And there it is. You'll note that it did keep the other attributes. So it is green, it does have 2 lines, it does word wrap, and it is centered. Okay. So let's take a look at setting a couple of the other attributes in code. We might also want to change the font color. And this is actually called the text color property. And the easiest thing we can do is call out a UI color. And we can call out the color by name. So we'll do it as red color. We can also do this another way. And I'll just put the code in right here. It'll actually do exactly the same thing, but it gives you more flexibility. I'm going to do a UI color, but I'm going to use the red, green, and blue components and the alpha channel. So I'm going to set red equal to 1. And if you're familiar with web, you might have expected something more like 255. In iOS, but the UI color is just 0 to 1. So you're using float amounts. So I'm going to make my green component 0 and my blue component 0, and that will indeed give me a red color. And I'll make my alpha channel 1. So that's going to give me the same red color that I have with the named color. But you can see I now have really fine-grained control of what the color actually is, as opposed to just being limited to the named colors. Let's just make sure that I know what my colors are. And there's my red. And last, we want to change the font. And if you remember when we looked at the attributes, I wasn't able to do a lot with the font. It's basically a system font. I could also pick a custom and pick a name. So let's take a look at doing this in code. I want to go right back to that system font that we had before. I'll just reset that. Okay. So in code, I'm going to set this to a courier. I'm going to do this by using the UI font property. And we'll use a courier font. And we'll give a size of 25 points. And we'll fix up the typing of font. And there we go. So what we're doing here is we're setting the label's text property, and then we'll set its text color, and we'll do it first by just calling out the red color on the UI color object, and then a different way of doing the UI color by setting the red, green, blue, and alpha components on the UI color object. In this case, we're both getting red because we've set red to 1 and green and blue to 0. So these two lines actually do the same thing. And then we set the UI font property using the font name of Courier and the size of 25. So let's see how we look now. And you can see the label does wrap its text. Its font color is red, and that font is significantly bigger at a 25 point. So that's working just as we would like it. So now we've been able to set the properties in code as well as setting them in the designer. Now it's fairly unusual that you would actually set a lot of the label's properties in code, with the exception of perhaps the text property, of course, and maybe the text color if you have some sort of application that requires a little bit of notification with a label and you want to get the user's attention by changing the label color. Perhaps you have a validation message or something like that for a bad login perhaps. So that's how we can work with the UI label control.